Alright, the first type of wood texture we're going to make is one using Photoshop's action list. Now, most people don't ever actually go in and look at this, but we have access to creating some very nice wood textures already kind of built into Photoshop. So let's go ahead and create a new file. We're going to make it 512 by 512. Now, if you're not working on game art, you can make this an even 500. You can make it an even 1000, whatever you want to do. I try to work in powers of 2, pretty much no matter what. So that's just a habit for me. But go ahead and make it whatever you like. All right, now we're going to come up to Window, and we're going to go down, and we can either click Actions here, or we can hit Alt F9, or we can open our actions over here. We'll get this little action window, and at first you're going to see default actions and some things here. And if you've never loaded it before, you're not going to see any textures. We're going to have to hit this little pull down, come down, and ask it to load up textures for us. Once we do, we can scroll down a ways, and we'll see that we find all sorts of textures already built in as actions. Now, if you're not really familiar with Photoshop, an action is simply recording what you're doing when you do a series of events, and then stopping the recording and saving that as an action, which means the next time you pick that and hit play, Photoshop will just go along and run all of those for you. So we're going to come up here. Let's do oak. I like oak. The only one I haven't really cared for is rosewood, but it's just personal preference, so I'm going to select oak. Rosewood 2 is very nice, by the way. And I'm going to hit this little play button. And the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to get some messages. And when we're running these actions, these are messages that would appear when we were doing each individual thing. So we're just going to go ahead and say continue or OK or whatever we need to say to keep it going. And then boom, we have a pretty nice oak texture. I say pretty nice, not super great. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this grain. Just going to make it a little bit darker. And I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and put in about 1.5 pixels. This is just to take some of that pixelation out of the grain. Alright, there's a couple other things that we can do to liven this up a little bit more too. I'm also going to come over and I'm going to hit D to reset my colors. I'm going to use my paint bucket tool, create a new layer, and drop either black or white in there, it doesn't matter which. I'm going to go up to Filter, come down to Render, and I'm going to hit Fibers. And the default's not bad, but I'm actually going to bring the variance down a little bit. I'm going to bring the strength up a little bit. And you can play with these to get different effects. So there's not a specific number you have to put in here. Just play to your heart's content. I'm going to hit OK. Alright, we got some stuff going on there. I am going to set this to soft light. And now you see we start to get some nice color variation in here. Now, this does look like a very light oak. And in many cases, this is what you may want. However, a lot of the time when oak is used out in the real world, it's finished with like a honey finish or something like that, or something much darker than oak actually is. So I'm going to go back to my wood layer here, and I'm going to change my color a little bit. So we'll come up, pick something, I don't know, somewhere in there. Yeah, somewhere down around 774,119. I'm just going to go ahead and fill that. And that's very dark. So I'm not quite as happy with that as I thought I would be. So we're going to yellow it up just a little. and pick something up here. Try it again. There we go. That's a little bit better. That's more like you might see a finish in a restaurant or something like that. Alright, so we're almost there. And in fact, at this point, it would be a really good idea to save this PSD file as just a base oak texture. In fact, you could also save one with just this as a base oak texture, and it's a good idea to take these PSD files and save out a lot of variations. The reason we're saving them as PSDs is to keep all of our layers intact so that we can go ahead and change colors and do whatever we want to create whatever new texture we need. But I'm going to go ahead and do one more thing. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to set that layer to overlay. I'm going to come over to my color swatch and just pick a medium gray. And I'm going to fill this. And you'll see absolutely nothing happen. That's because we already have it on overlay. If it were normal, it would completely fill it in. And it helps if I remember where overlay is. Alright, now I'm going to come over to my dodge and my burn tools. And throughout this course you'll see me do this a couple different ways. And that's just so you can see them. Sometimes I'll do the dodge and the burn on the same layer like this. Sometimes I will do two separate layers, and I will do multiply for burn, and I will do screen for dodging. And it just kind of depends on what workflow you like and what kind of thing you're making. But as we get down the line, you'll see more and more of that. So I'm going to start with my dodge tool. I'm going to have a pretty big, not this big, but a pretty big brush. And I'm just going to spot around a little. Did I say dodge tool? I meant burn tool. I like to start with my darks first. So I'm just going to pull some color information out of this. And it's just kind of haphazard. You don't want to get caught trying to create some kind of pattern. And as you can see, this wood's already starting to get a kind of distressed look to it. And we can go over, grab our dodge tool. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring my exposure down a little bit so we're not overdoing too much. And maybe make some smaller areas. Alright, and then for a last pass, whichever one I'm on, in this case dodge, I'm going to make my brush really big. I'm just going to do a couple of swipes. And then I'm going to do it again with burn. Now this isn't really going to add detail, but it's going to pull a little bit more information out for our eyes. And as you can see, now we start to get an oak that looks very old and very distressed. It looks like the finish may be pulled off it, and it's starting to go with water stains and rot. But it gives us a really nice texture to work with whatever our project is. And we can always go back to our original PSDs that we saved and go another direction with it. We can keep it very clean, or we can start to distress it more, or we can go with a different kind of finish, whatever we want to do. So that gives us our second type of wood. In our next video, we're going to take a look at more of a painterly look for wood. This one's particularly good for 2D games, or for doing the kind of like kids illustration type stuff. So I'll see you in that video.